Hi there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. In this video, we'll look at linking and reductions for verbs with ing and adding him and them. For example, I was reading him a book, they were reading them a book. So first of all, in this case, our stress is going to fall on the word book. So it's going to be long and have a clear vowel. We're also not going to really reduce on reading because it's an important verb earlier in the phrase. But you could hear how, as I said, I was reading him a book, I was reading him a book, that the rest of the phrase is fairly linked and can be somewhat reduced. So, for example, I was is going to be very fast and linked together. And I would suggest backwards chaining to get that to sound natural for you. So that would sound like saying reading, was reading, I was reading. So thinking about that, we do say was with the vowel schwa. Even if I'm saying I was, I'm just going to hold that longer. But in I was reading, it's almost like that vowel is almost gone. I was reading, I was reading. So these are very quick and then a little bit more length on reading. And then our main reduction here is that we can drop the H in this phrase because him is not important. If I were stressing on him, I was reading him a book rather than I was reading her a book, then I wouldn't lose my H. Him would have a long, clear vowel and its true sound. But in this context, it becomes more like I was reading him a book, reading him a book. So I still have a little vowel, but I just am moving right from that of ng of reading, reading him, and I'm linking the him to the schwa, so reading him a book, and then book again is our stressed word. This might also be helpful to backwards chain. That would sound like book, a book, him a book, reading him a book, reading him a book. If it's hard for you to do it full speed and have those natural sounds, what I suggest is use that backwards chaining and go more slowly and then try to build up speed as you feel confident in linking and reducing. Let's break it into the two parts of the phrase. We'll start in the back of the sentence, so I'll go more slowly this time. Book, a book, him a book, reading him a book. Reading him a book. So I'm speeding up. Reading him a book. Was reading him a book. I was reading him a book. More slowly for the whole sentence. I was reading him a book. I was reading him a book. I was reading him a book. So you can hear how the reason these things get linked and connected and reduced is that I'm using that line of connected speech where my voice isn't really turning off as I'm connecting between. I was reading him a book. If I have to turn my voice off for him reading him a book, it breaks the flow of the speech. So I think that's probably why that H of him can get reduced. And it's natural, correct, it's not informal. People won't even hear or notice that that H is missing as long as you're linking and saying that smoothly. That's the way native speakers will use this, say this phrase, this combination of NG and H in fluent speech. Then when we come to I was reading them a book, interestingly, them can also sometimes lose its TH at the beginning, reading them a book. And then it's going to have a little more of an M, where this was having a little more of an im. So the vowel will be slightly different. But because we really reduce those vowels, reading him a book, it's really hard to hear the difference between reading him and reading them. So it may sound almost identical because it's going to have a reduced vowel and the sound right after reading. You can also, though, reduce this as reading them a book. So it's not so reduced in the TH dropping. It's more that I'm not saying them with a long clear vowel, reading them. So the to the combination can stay, or that TH will sometimes also drop. Again, if I need to really be making it clear the difference between him and them, then I'm going to use the full form. I was reading him a book. I was reading them a book. In that case, it's an unusual stress pattern of stressing on the pronoun to make it clear to whom you were reading. But in natural speech, you might hear that this word them also gets reduced. And they were reading them a book. So here again, let's backwards chain it so we can hear all the linking and the reductions. So we have book, them a book, reading them a book, we're reading them a book, they were reading them a book. So not really a lot of real reductions here. They were. We just are linking them together and saying them fairly quickly. They were versus they were reading them a book. With breaks and length, we're really backwards chaining and linking as we go. Let's try this one slowly with backwards chaining so you can build up speed on it. It sounds like a book, them a book, reading them a book, we're reading them a book, they were reading them a book. That wasn't that slow. Let's go one more time more slowly. They were reading them a book. Or linked, they were reading them a book. They were reading them a book. They were reading them a book. So I would say we're going to hear pretty much 99% of the time the him being reduced. I would say reading them a book. You're going to hear that TH drop maybe 50% of the time, 75% of the time. So we're more likely to keep that TH than we are to keep that H of him. It's a less common reduction to drop the them, but depending on the context, you might hear more clarity on the TH, or you may hear it more reduced in natural fluent speech. If you would like more help for fluent speaking, do check out our playlist called Real Talk and our fluent speaking podcasts and playlists here on the channel. You can also check out our online course, Real Talk, on our website, speechmodification.com. It walks you through common reductions, how to practice, and uses TV and movies to give you the sense of real speakers learning how to listen and imitate and apply the Real Talk technique in your own speech. I hope you'll check it out. It's on our website, speechmodification.com. Thanks so much for joining me for this lesson. I appreciate your support, your comments and questions. If you have something you'd like to see me cover in this series or any of our playlists on the channel, just leave me a note in the comments. I'd always respond to those. I'm happy to direct you to videos that I already have or add your request to my list to cover in a future class. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye, everyone. Hope to see you again soon.